Adab, Sat Sri Akal, and hello. This is Darshan Kaur, your Parikrama host, and I'm back today with a very interesting, yet you might say controversial topic. Well, there is no controversy, as we'll find out as we talk to our panelists. So, this is the month of October 2021. And you will be happy to know that several US states, including Texas, Florida, New Jersey, Ohio, Massachusetts, and our own Georgia, have proclaimed October as the Hindu Heritage Month. Noting that Hinduism has contributed greatly to America through its unique history and heritage. And as I was researching for this podcast, I just saw that Michigan too has joined this list. So I've heard that there are about 11 such states and the number is ever increasing. Great news for all Hindu Americans. On the other hand, co-sponsored by departments of nearly 50 US universities, including Stanford, Harvard, Princeton, New York University, Cornell, and Northwestern University, there was a 3-day global academic conference on dismantling global Hindutva, which kind of created quite a row and, sort of hurt the sentiments of Hindu Americans as well. So given these two contrasting events that happened, we thought let's have some very articulate and famous folks over in our panel today to have this discussion around Hinduism and Hindutva. So before we move forward, let me go ahead and introduce my panelists, starting with the lady, Shobha Swamy. She's a very passionate community volunteer, I would say. She's also passionate about health, wellness. She spent 25 years in the automotive and engineering field, but then that's when she discovered her passion for helping the community. And now she teaches nutrition and cooking classes at Morehouse School of Medicine. She's also involved in the nonprofit Aim for Seva and on the board of several other nonprofit organizations such as USHA, which is US Hindu Alliance, and CoHNA, Coalition of Hindus of North America. She also volunteers with Seva International. Parthiv, who is our other panelist, as everybody is already likely familiar with him, is the editor-in-chief of Khabar Magazine. His work has bagged several awards, and he was also recently a finalist for a Folio Award. His articles have been published in the AJC, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, The Hill, Huffington Post, and several other publications. So welcome to our panel, both of you. I'm going to start right away because we have several very important questions that I want to get through. So let's start with you, Shobhaji. Let's just start with the very basic, like 101, Is there a difference between Hinduism and Hindutva?
As many of you know, namaste and thank you for inviting us. As many of you know, Hinduism is a name given to us by various waves of colonizers and people who were colonizing the subcontinent of India. So this is not a name that we kind of recognize for ourselves. But nevertheless, it has become a standard and it has become common practice for others to call us by this name. And hence we too, being very adaptive, have taken on this term Hinduism. But as you already know, our whole civilization and our culture, and which is the oldest ethnic indigenous culture in the world, didn't go by any specific name other than Sanatana Dharma. So Hinduism, what it denotes to all of us practicing Hindus, is a Hindu way of life. Our scriptures, our shastras, the worship that we do, our pujas, our vibrant festivals that everybody in the US is privy to and has noticed, our really colorful garbhas that we have during Navratri. So it's a culture based on, a very ancient civilization called Sanatana Dharma. And Hindutva, if we go to the word Hindutva now, moving on, Hindu plus Tattva. So if we are called Hindus, and what is Tattva? Tattva is that which is the essence, the meaning, the ness, which is Hindu-ness. That's what it means. And maybe there are a lot of people perhaps who have co-opted another meaning. They have labeled it as something different, and they have a different ideology, a different message for what it is. But in essence, if you get to the word and how we practicing Hindus would refer to it, this is what it would mean to us. And as you know, we Hindus are there in more than 16 different countries across the globe, originally from India and the Indian subcontinent, but now all over. So with that, I'd like to, pass on the baton to Parthiv ji.
Parthiv, same question.
Thank you. First of all, namaskar to all of you all, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share some thoughts. So the difference between Hinduism and Hindutva, like Shobha ji mentioned, if you look at the literal term Hindutva, it should mean the very essence of Hinduism, So it should have very, very positive, connotations. It should mean that it is the best of what Hinduism has to offer. But unfortunately, what has happened, I guess, the very people who started propagating the word Hindutva, I'm talking about from decades back, from Veer Savarkar's time, the founder of RSS, the people who started using them term to describe themselves, for good or bad, have been affiliated with extremist forces, in India. For example, assassination of Mahatma, and then in modern times, we have seen lynchings in the name of Hinduism, So all those extremist factors, which incite violence or communalism or division, and which converts a religion into a political force, it politicizes a spirituality, have been associated with Hindutva. So the folks, Shobha ji mentioned, and, even the people at the Hindu America Foundation, they lament the fact that, Hindutva has been, corrupted by various forces to mean different things to different people. But I say that corruption began with the very people who started using the term, in a mass fashion. So if the blame lies anywhere, I feel it's where, the practice of a good religion, was commingled with the politics and the power and so on. So in my mind, there is a clear difference between Hinduism and Hindutva, because of this. It shouldn't have been so, but because of this history, to me, Hinduism is the valid and beautiful practice of a religion. It's a deeply personal relationship of an individual with his or own creator. And it is everything that Sanatan Dharma is all about. It is Patanjali's yoga, it is the Gita, it is, Gita Vashishta, it is the Mahabharata, Ramayana, Bhagavad Gita, it is the practice of the 4 different yogas, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, all that. All those beautiful and powerful practices, which define Hinduism, and the innumerable, subsections and sections. There's Shaivism, there's Vaishnavism, all those beautiful practices. To me, that is Hinduism, and that's a powerful approach for a person to seek divinity, Whereas Hindutva, in my mind, is political, power. It is communalism, it is extremism, it is lynchings, it is curbing freedom of press, it is when a political ruling party is affiliated with extremist factions such as Bajrang Dal or RSS. To me, that is Hindutva. So that is the difference.
Okay, so you are basically, from what I understood, just so that I'm clear, you're saying that Shobha ji is right in the sense of that Hindutva is actually the essence of Sanatan Dharma or being a Hindu, but that this term itself has been hijacked
Correct.
by certain people, and now this has come to be denoted as somewhat like militant arm, or there has been some kind of a belligerence and militancy associated with this term. If that, I mean, that's how I understood it.
That is right. And same, because I would have loved to say that because as a practicing Hindu, I would have loved to say that I'm proud of my Hindutva, but I can't say that anymore because I feel that it's the whole Hindutva term has been affiliated with the right-wing extremism.
Okay, so I'm going to continue on this thought because another question that is kind of related to what you just said. So now that we are, obviously nowadays it's, it's a global village, and then there is the whole social media. So because of this, certain terms, once they have been formulated and tend to become associated with certain things, that is what becomes the popular opinion, right? Or the most common opinion, right? So what role do you think social media is playing in creating the opinion of people with regards to defining the term Hindutva or associating it with the militancy or belligerence?
Is that directed to me, the question?
For you, Parthiv, and then I'll ask the same question to Shobhaji.
So social media definitely is playing a huge role, as with everything. We saw that in American politics. We're seeing it in India. These two countries, especially. WhatsApp, Facebook. There's tremendous amount of propaganda. There's tremendous amount of organized IT cell activity by political parties. Which is spreading a lot of trolling, a lot of propaganda. Now the people doing it, they define Hindutva as perhaps something positive, something good, and so they have a problem with these universities who again they have their own agendas, and I don't appreciate everything that gets done in these kind of conferences, and they probably fail to differentiate between a beautiful religion of Hinduism, a beautiful practice, and sometimes they commingle Hindutva with Hinduism, which is very, very sad. But as far as coming back to social media, yes, because of political parties investing so much in messaging, it's become a huge battleground to shape opinions. And unfortunately, there's a lot of propaganda, that's being propagated through social media, WhatsApp particularly.
Okay. So Shobhaji, my question to you related to social media as well, but do you think like your definition of what Hindutva is, like the essence of Hinduism, do you think that is it possible to use social media to create that awareness and to remove the blemish, if you will, from the term Hindutva? Is that possible? Do you think social media can play a role in that?
I think we must keep in mind in today's age about the labels that are used. Could be anything and everything. If we start identifying ourselves, but labels that somebody has created, and then the meaning to those labels that may sometimes change over time, we are seeing, especially in social media, we're seeing all the labels that people use. So I, for one, at a personal level, I refrain from using labels. The work must be done. And if there's anything that we need to stand up for, it is injustice of all kinds. So that is my focus. I'm not so much entrenched in a label that somebody else has either used for us or defined for us. And I also follow many of the women Hindu thought leaders today, Shefali Vaidya ji and Esther Dhanraj ji, where they're all trying to take back, exactly like you were mentioning, Darshan, they're trying to take back this narrative of Hindutva, and they have the hashtag I am Hindutva. So I can proudly say I am Hindutva for whatever it means. But if a terminology has been co-opted and there is mixed messaging about it, then it's just best to stay clear, because otherwise your job isn't going to be done. Whatever we are here, we all have a role as human beings, as Hindus, as Hindu Americans, as citizens of the world. So we have a global role to play in all of this. And the focus should be more on, how do we live harmoniously? This is the goal. And anything that promotes harmony And the essence of Sanatana Dharma and the meaning of Dharma itself is harmony. Harmony with what? Harmony with everything around us, the roles that we play with the trees, with the mountains, with the entire cosmos and the entire universe. This is our goal. So I wouldn't let social media dictate who I am and to co-opt my, definitions. People may come up with labels. And just like how Parthiv said, there are individuals in under every umbrella, Hinduism umbrella, all other umbrellas as well. And we shouldn't let the individuals define, like he mentioned, the beautiful, ancient, ethnic, only living indigenous civilization and culture, which has so much to offer. That is the key here we have to take. Because if a civilization has something to offer, and it's for the betterment of the world and to live in harmony and peace, why not adapt and adopt many of these? Like Parthiv mentioned, yoga for one, dhyana and meditation, as you have seen in the Western world, doctors are, I was once visiting a psychologist where you had to sit down for 25 minutes to do your meditation before you got to see her, not after, before, so that you could be more clear in your thought. You could, express yourself more clearly, and it would help your session so much more. So similar to that, I know, there's mindfulness and there are so many other things that are, that are valuable that we must, that we have to offer to the world. And we Hindus should be proud of it. We have been a colonized people. So there's a lot of mixed messaging about everything. Is it a colonized term? Is it a colonial structure? All of these come to mind, when was the word Hindutva coined, and how were they using it? Was it under the colonized regimes or the waves of colonizers we've had? So it's all very circumstantial, and we don't have to box ourselves into one particular definition of a label. And like Parthiv was also mentioning, I want to bring attention to the Dismantling Global Hindutva Conference. They started with a similar note that Hinduism is separate and Hindutva is separate. This is bad, this is good. That's how they started off. But if you attended the conference and if you sat in there and heard, they finally tied that they had to dismantle Hinduism in order to dismantle Hindutva. That's what they all concluded in various sessions that we attended. So you can see that internally it was all tied in together, but externally they made a different show of it before the conference, ever started. So there's this difference of opinion among, so-called academics of 40 different universities, etc., etc. So we need to stand up as Hindus to build more awareness, not just among Hindus, but also among non-Hindus, because we too are a colonized people. I, for one, had a colonized mind being brought up in India. I had no clue about a lot of things that are now, thanks to the media, thanks to people doing research, thanks to people who are, looking up about our history and trying to portray as accurate a history as possible as to what happened. And this is the story of all colonized people all across the globe, not just for Indians. If you look at any colonized people, it's a mixed history, and it's a weave that we have to untangle ourselves out of.
True. So basically, you have to take back the narrative. I think I'm hearing both of you say that as Hindus, you have to take back the narrative and not let a few people, or even the media for that matter, define or assign labels to what is actually a wonderful thing, the way of life. I've often heard it say Hinduism is not a religion, it's a way of life, right? Okay, so I'm going to move on to my next question. Back to you, Parthiv. So this, you mentioned in your earlier response, you talked about the narrative being taken over or by certain political parties or certain sects or group of people for their own benefit or agenda, that they have sort of taken over the narrative and defined Hindutva as something other than the essence of Hinduism. So the question to you is, do you think this rise of this sort of like more confrontational arm of the religion or people is a backlash to the perceived appeasement of minorities in India. Because a lot of times what happens, I think that was the reason for Trump winning the election over here, is that certain people, or group of people felt that they were being sidelined, or that they were they kind of felt like they were the other sides, or other side was being appeased too much, right? So do you think that this whole rise in the militancy when it comes to Hindutva is a backlash to that appeasement?
I mean, that certainly could be one factor. I'm not sure that's the only or the big reason. I mean, it could be one of the reasons. And I agree that a truly secular democratic nation needs to have a uniform civil code instead of having Muslim personal law. I don't like the fact that we have that, and but my contention often with right-wing folks is that if we want to achieve a truly secular democratic nation, and if we want to abolish these kind of distinctions for a minority community, then the way to go about it is not by bullying on the strength of majoritism. I think the way to go about it is not by saying on the one hand that, hey, you cannot have Muslim personal law, but here we are wanting to build a Hindu Rashtra. So the more the majority community does to uphold secularism, to uphold progressive values, to uphold inclusiveness, the more we will set a tone, if not right now, maybe in the next decade or two, where we can work towards abolishing Muslim personal law. We can work towards making it truly secular. But I don't think when a minority community feels cornered, when it feels like it doesn't belong, or at least when the majority tries to convey that it doesn't belong, that is not the time that they're going to be conducive to having these kind of dramatic changes happen. So I feel that the goal is to move towards abolishing these privileges in the name of religion. But I think the way we go about it is makes all the difference.
Okay, I mean that's food for thought, certainly, right? Because it's I think it's just like it's sort of like a backlash that is happening, which is quite contrary to what you are saying. Shobhaji, the question for you is that, given that there are esteemed thinkers on both sides, right? I mean, as in people who feel strongly about the fact that minorities were they have been appeased too much, or that Hindus feel little left out, or something like that, and the media is kind of adding fuel to the fire, right? There is media on both sides. So both sides, and again I see a lot of very highly esteemed thinkers, very intelligent speakers on on both sides of this divide. So what do you think are the potential ramifications of this? Is there a middle ground somewhere where both sides can meet? Is there any room for reconciliation? And then, to continue the question, where do you see this headed in about 10-15 years from now?
Mhm. I would like to take you back to the history of India and its people. If you've read the history of India and its people, you will recall that we are the first people to welcome persecuted people who were refugees in their countries or had to flee their countries, people who were facing injustice and being persecuted in their own countries. We were the first country to take on these people, and today we have an excellent, stellar track record of how these people settled in India and have led peaceful, respectful, mutually respectful lives. When the ideology of certain sects and communities clash with the global vision for harmony and peace, then there is a problem. We're asking for, as Hindus, no matter where we are, whether in America or in India, is for mutual respect. The ability to practice not just free speech, but also mutual respect for religious diversity. That is what makes the world a diverse place. painting the whole world, the universe, entire earth with just one paintbrush of just the Abrahamic faith. And if that is the goal of certain sects of people, it is the responsibility of the entire world, the people of the world, to unite, to stand up, to say, ethnic, cultural, indigenous people of the world must stand, must be allowed to be respected, and we have to have mutual respect for those. If your method of worship is valid, then my method of worship is equally valid, not tolerated, no, equally valid. That's all we as Hindus ask, whether in America or in India. And as you know, what is happening and unfurling in Bangladesh with the current event, you can tie up what's happening currently to what's happening in Bangladesh. And maybe you can say that Hindus have been persecuted. The Hindu genocide has been wiped out from history. The waves of colonizing from the Islamist colonizers and invaders to the European colonizers and invaders, it was not just few years, it was not 30, 40 years, it was not 100 years. It was 800 years plus 200 to 300 years, 1,200 years. So the psyche of a people, when it's subjugated for 1,200 years of generations of people, their practices, their methods, their ways of worship and their rituals, they can get little entwined, they need to be adaptive, they need to be, protecting their own. So in the method of protection, they have adapted certain ways and methods and means. In different parts of India, you can see some places you need to, some places there is, freedom. So all of this is leading to something like this. And the way I see, I am optimistic. I see a world in 10 to 15 years where more and more people, like they are doing today, see the richness of the culture, the value that this culture brings for peace and harmony, not just amongst ourselves, but within. That is the key, I think, to unlocking the potential for world peace. Is when you are at peace with yourself and you're content and satisfied with yourself and the rest of the world at a transactional level, that's when you bring about peace. Others may be doing whatever they want, but at the end of the day, if everybody works this way, this is what will bring about peace and harmony. And I think the world is awakening. I think the world is going through a renaissance similar to what the Hindus are going through. And I think I am very hopeful for a world that embraces the goodness of yoga, the goodness of the healing effects of yoga. And I know people from diverse religious backgrounds, and nowhere does it say in Hinduism that yoga is to be performed only by Hindus. And you must understand our form of prayer as well is Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha. We are not saying Hindus Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sanatani Bhavantu Sukhinaha. This is not what we are saying. So we pray and we wish the very best for the entire world, and many of that was showcased with all the prayers and all the pujas and the yajnas, but that were done for this virus as well. So that may we, as an entire human race on earth, be free of this kind of suffering. That is our prayer. And this Hindu prayer, if everybody can relate to at a meaningful level, this would be, bring about a wonderful peace and harmony in the world. And I think our world, I would like to be optimistic for the sake of the generations to come and the next generation, that we are heading for a more peaceful, safer, and more harmonious living for sure.
So you are certainly very optimistic about the future. Parthiv, given the kind of sharp divide that exists presently, same question for you, where do you see this headed in 10 to 15 years? Is there any room for reconciliation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm also by nature very optimistic, and I believe in the cyclical nature of things. I mean, at one time in the US, we got all very elated about an African American president being elected, but then immediately after that we had Trump. So everyone was, oh well, racism is still alive and well and kicking, and it is, up to a certain extent it is. And then again, we have, again, a Democratic, political party, with Joe Biden, a little bit more inclusive and all. So my thing is there is a cyclical nature to things. When I was growing up in Mumbai in the 80s, we had a very, very cosmopolitan environment. We didn't have, at least, not just because, I was a young person, a child, or, even a young adult, but we didn't have as much acronomity between religions. It was a cosmopolitan, inclusive environment. And actually, it started getting worse in the last decade or two, and there is more communalism in the last couple decades, more animosity. So I'm thinking that, things, like Shobhaji said, will things, positive forces will prevail. The cycle will come back, because I think that's has to be the direction of humanity. Otherwise, we will perish, whether it's in India or the US, otherwise we will perish, So I'm hopeful as well, and it's not just blind hope. I feel that, yeah, what encourages me is that more and more the global community is embracing pure spirituality. When I say pure spirituality, I mean the ones without labels. Like, she mentioned, I don't believe in labels much. I don't like to hang labels on myself. And I think the world is going towards pure spirituality. They may come through Buddhism, they may come through Hinduism, they may come through Christianity, but they're coming towards a spirituality which is secular, which is experiential, which is not dogmatic. So these are and all these align very well with Hindu religion, because I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm bragging about my religion, but I feel that our heritage, our ancient heritage, the spirituality that we have, the legacy we have, is most conducive for inclusion, for experiential reality as opposed to dogma, and the world is moving in that direction. So I'm hopeful.
Okay, perfect. So one thing that all of us agree on, I'm an optimist as well, is that we are all hoping, and we do see a more positive, more inclusivity in our future. One thing that kind of, it's a question which came to my mind today. So today is Karwa Chauth, right? And so on one hand, it's a I guess celebration of marriage. Women fasting for the long lives of their husbands. And then on the other hand, there is that some people that feel, oh, this is very sexist and very repressive. So again, it brought to my mind this sharp divide, right? Now, every religion, this is again my personal opinion, and I know I'm the host, not the panelist, but I feel that there should always be evolution. That is how we are able to survive. It's because as a species, we evolve biologically. So when we organize ourselves into religion, I think every religion should have that room for that evolution as well, right? So on one hand we say, oh, these are like traditions, and we respect our traditions, and on the other hand, the other side feels like we are losing out on these traditions as we are becoming more and more progressive. So Parthiv, again, I'm going to address you with this question. Where do you, what is the right thing to do? Should we continue our traditions, or should we evolve out of them thinking, oh, these are no longer relevant? I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that.
That's perfectly fine. I mean, look, I don't have all the answers, and I know religions are very, very complex. Practices are very, very complex. A practice which would be very meaningful to one person may be very demeaning to another person. And I feel we should respect individual will, instead of imposing something as tradition or culture. If it comes genuinely from a person's heart that they want to do it, well and good, but otherwise, you're right. There are some traditions in our culture as well as in all world cultures which are based on patriarchy. and I feel that they may be not fair, to women. So I feel that, if we're going to have a day like Kadwa Chauth, why not have a day where a husband fasts for the wife, as far as it is done with genuine intentions, it's done not because the religion forces you to do that, because customs force you to do that, or your sas forces you to do that. No, do it because you want to do it, and that's beautiful. That's how I see it. But you're right, there may be a little bit of patriarchy involved, which needs to be questioned, and we need to grow out of it, I feel.
Not true. Any guy who's sensible and wants, as they say, happy wife equals happy life. Any guy who's sensible will also likely fast with their wife on the same day. Make it a festival of mutual love,
Mhm.
for each other. Because the woman, obviously, when she's fasting for the long life of her husband, that's her way of showing her love. That is how I see it, right? So the guy should support and do the same thing. I mean, again, this is again my opinion, and because today is the festival, I kind of was thinking about it this morning.
See,
Sorry.
what I add quickly is like the individual freedom is most important here, because other people evaluating and making judgments about, hey, this woman should not do that for her husband, may not be the right thing to do. Because if you familiar with the idea about the a lot of Islamic women, they wear burqas, and they wear it with pride and joy. So folks who are saying, oh, you are propagating oppressive tradition, don't do that. But hey, if that is what they want to do, and if they feel that they're not being oppressed, that is their right to do that. Similarly, in our situation, if a woman wants to do it, well and good, but I feel that more men should do it too.
I feel a little differently because I think we are losing the symbolism and the inner meaning of many of our practices. Because again, it's very similar reasoning is because of the years and centuries of colonizing and invasions. We've lost touch with who we are, why we do what we do, and in this industrialized, materialistic, new definition of success world, we have started to import and imbibe some of the cultures that are just merely looking at materialistic success as success. So whether it be Karwa Chauth or it be Devi Puja, or could be anything else, any of the practices and the pujas that we do, we in the Hindu tradition are the only tradition or religion, you can say, that looks up upon the divine feminine as divinity and does puja for that. Ours is the only culture. You please quote me another culture that does this. Okay, so I'm not the one to harp on this label of patriarchy. There's actually, it's more matriarchal. If you look at it, people may use it to their convenience, and there are co-opted versions of all of this. But I think as a woman being brought up in India and here in the United States, having lived here for 30 years, I think I have equal rights of doing, what I want. I don't feel that there's a patriarchy sitting on my shoulders, looking down upon me saying you should do this. And also we must really look into the pluralistic way of how we all come together practicing Hinduism in so many different ways. Very different in the south, from very different in the north to the west to the east, just in India alone. And to that, I want to add, we have an open architecture, what is called an open architecture, which I don't think any either way of life or living or spirituality or anything has to the extent that we have. So I have the ability to create my own Ishta Devata, Ishta Mantra, Ishta Puja, Kula Devata. You can change your Kula Devata. There is no chastising. And we must understand some of these things. These definitions come, unfortunately, from the Abrahamic traditions. So all ethnic traditions, civilizations, Sanatana Dharma, and everything else is looked upon with a specific lens. So it's time that we look upon ourselves from our lens, from the insider's lens, from the practitioner's lens. How do we view it? And have you done the homework to understand it before you take on the labels that social media puts upon you, the patriarchy, the misogyny about our shastras? And also we must look into our shastras and see, is there sanction in the shastras for treating people badly? Is there sanction in the shastras to say treat these people this way and these people that way? No, there isn't. So this is the understanding: injustice, adharma of every kind anywhere in the world. We are not saying that adharma only in India or for Hindus in the US we should stand up for. We should stand up for adharma and injustice anywhere. Just like, we joined the protest yesterday for the atrocities committed against a Hindu, Bangladeshi Hindus. I think the world needs to stand up. We need to stand up for various other things. And I think in this world of media, news is getting to us faster. And I think we must use this to our benefit, to stand up for those of us, those of our kind, our humankind, who are facing injustice. And not just for the human beings, for animals, for the trees, for our planet, for better water, for ecological purposes. And you can see from our scriptures as well as all our texts that the eco-friendly way of living was inbuilt into, before plastics were created, everything was biodegradable. And we ate on banana leaves and palm leaves strung up together. Even I remember as we were young in the South, this is if there was more than your family having lunch or dinner, all these things came out. They came out of nowhere. It's not like we always stocked all these things, but these things were our normal way of life and living. We used to use very little water. In fact, I kid my kids by saying maybe we should go back to bucket showers, Parthiv. I don't know. So it will definitely use just a few gallons compared to leaving the shower on and then dreaming or singing or being there for half an hour before gallons of water have gone down the drain. And all you need is to freshen up and to get clean yourself and get out of the shower. I used to have a small timer for the kids,
So
when they were young.
there is a room for going back to the, sorry Partha, just 1 second. So there is room for going back to the traditions as well as evolving them to suit because the kind of life changes, right? I mean, we used to have stone paved roads, for instance, that would be disastrous for the cars that we drive today, right? So we cannot say, oh, Romans had these roads that lasted thousands of years, so let's go back and start driving back on those roads because that would kill our cars of today, right? So there is certain room for traditions that have always been there, and then there is a room to evolve to suit your current lifestyle as well. Not just lifestyle, I mean, I'm not saying go for extravagance and stuff like that. So I just wanted to make that point. Parthiv, I'm sorry, what did you want to say?
Now, to the point that Shobhaji made, I think we'd be, amiss to say that everything that we say about ourselves comes from Abrahamic perspectives or from colonialism. I think it'd be turning a blind eye to say that, patriarchy is not a actual societal problem, not only in India, but everywhere in the world. I mean, the history of human beings, if you look at the last, couple millennia, there is no doubt that it has been a patriarchal culture, and it has not been very fair. I mean, my wife, she's a modern woman. She's very feminist, and she and I, we talk about it, and we understand that our parents, only in these recent years, things are getting better, but until our parents' generations, the woman was subjugated, I mean, whether we like it or not. I mean, so yeah, on the one hand, we have these devis and we put devis at the highest, esteem, but that's the it's not a singular picture. That's the complexity of a society, is that, yeah, we have devis, we pray and worship devis, but at the same time, at a day-to-day level, I don't think we can deny, and it's not just a outside label. I mean, patriarchy is a fact of Indian life,
Yeah, there's
especially,
a
especially
sorry,
in
there
environments.
is female feticide as well. Since you brought up that point, I did want
I mean,
to mention
he's
that in
referring to
this
the
context.
patriarchy all across the world, including the United States. Yeah.
Yes, as well as, yeah, because I mean, I've grown up, in my own family, in my own environment, in my own culture, and living in a cosmopolitan city, not even in some urban small town. Living in Mumbai, I've seen in my middle class environment, a husband comes in, after a day's work, and the wife is immediately completely in service of him, from starting from handing him a glass of water. See, these can be beautiful gestures. I'm not against gestures. What I'm against is that, why is it all one-sided? Why is it that only the female of the house has to serve the male of the house? Is what I mean. In the past generation, no matter what, I mean, the woman could be sick, but the man is not going to jump in and do the dishes. So I mean, patriarchy, it would be completely, sticking our heads in the sand to say that it doesn't exist, or it's a foreign label. No, it's not. It was a fact of our life.
I mean, even here, I have colleagues that are not from India, and I have observed. I mean, it's certainly a little different. I think even this society has evolved a little bit over time. But if you look back at the 60s and the 70s over here, even in the 80s, and even now to a large extent, that patriarchy still exists, right? But that's a topic,
But
and for a different for a different podcast. So I'm
yeah.
going to move on. I'm going to move on from this topic. I was going to ask another question, but I think we're pretty much running out of time. So I'm going to just ask one last question. Um, so what we had today was, in my mind, a very neutral discussion, right? Because nobody is trying to chastise anyone or anything. Nobody is going in, with
Are you
none
saying
of us.
Arnab Goswami kind of action?
That's exactly what came to mind, Parthiv ji.
No, but
Fireworks.
so actually, don't Arnab Goswami and I share the same birthday. But as you can see, I'm a very different host, different kind of host. So anyway, we brought up a good point. So given that our discussion was more, I would call it a progressive and very neutral discussion, do you still think that just this discussion would result in trolling from both sides? So, Shobha ji, what is your opinion? Do you think we'll be prone to trolling just with this sort of like progressive and neutral discussion?
Um, Perhaps yes, perhaps no, but like I said earlier, this labeling, trolling, all of this is a frenzy that we mustn't give too much attention to. The work must go on, the injustice must stop. We must strive for world peace and harmony, and live harmoniously with ourselves, and be at peace with ourselves and content with ourselves, and the rest of the world will follow suit for everybody and everything. And we have a wonderful culture of looking at everything as divine and divinity, and understanding that and living that life. When we say we are a way of life, we just doesn't mean, oh, we are a way of life. It's very hard to give a meaning to that, but what we mean truly is, it is a view of life. It is an understanding that is more important than the physical way of life. It's imbibed in us, in our culture. I understand that part, but very importantly is pending understanding. And so we do certain things pending understanding. The children say shlokas in Sanskrit pending understanding. We do some of the rituals and the pujas which our elders asked us to do, pending understanding. If you want to know more, nowadays there is a lot of research. There are people, if you just take on the women's role of menstruation itself, so much has come about that I didn't know growing up. So this is all a wonderful age and era to live in, and we must celebrate life and celebrate everybody's presence here with mutual respect. Thank you.
No, sure. That's, we remain eternally hopeful. Parthiv, same question for you. What do you think? We're gonna get trolled?
I mean, trolls don't need a reason, right? I mean, you can be as reasonable as you want to be. You can be as friendly as non-combative, and then they still find a problem. So I mean, finding a problem is the easiest thing to do. So yeah, I mean, any content out there, once you put the content out, especially on a controversial topic, people will have difference of opinions, and we can call it troll. They may think that they're just expressing their opinions. Depends on how much acrimony is involved. If there are threats involved, if there is violence involved, then yeah, that's nasty, that's trolling. But I'm sure there are people who have genuine opinions which are different than what I voiced or what Shobhaji voiced, and they're entitled to those opinions.
No, absolutely. And, I think when you are in the media or when you appear in the media, you always have to develop a thick skin before you actually do that, right? So, and I think I also feel, and I'm going to sort of like end the podcast with these words, that any religion or any society that doesn't allow room for discussion is prone to becoming obsolete, is prone to becoming fundamentalist. So this discussion is just the tip of the iceberg. And like I said, there are several topics just related to this that we could have different podcasts, different discussions, different discourses on. So the purpose is to provide food for thought and to encourage discourses, to encourage opinions, because that is how a religion, that is how a society evolves. So we hope to have several such discourses in the future. So please stay tuned in for that. Thank you, Shobha ji. Thank you, Parthiv ji, for being our guest today, for not having the fur fly, for having a very civil and reasonable discourse, and hope to see you again on one of our podcasts in the future.
Thank you.
And thank you both of you again. And इसके साथ ही मैं दर्शन आपसे इजाज़त लेती हूँ. अगली बारी आपके लिए एक और फन पॉडकास्ट के साथ जल्दी ही मिलूंगी. तब तक के लिए enjoy all the festivals. खूब मिठाई खाइए मेरी तरफ से भी. Happy Diwali in advance, and hope to see you all sometime soon. Bye bye.
Om Shanti and Jai Shri Krishna.
Om Shanti.